specifically the conservatory, is trying to take music into the community engagement space to move the needle on social issues through music making. Like traditionally, conservatories were very good at performance. We would do wonderful, usually classical or jazz musical performances. And the first baby steps of community engagement was to take those performances out into the community and just perform, not in your traditional concert hall, but in some sort of community space. And Lawrence does a lot of that. We perform in warming shelters and food pantries and in schools and have partnerships at Riverview Gardens. But we really wanted to go much further to try to impact communities directly with music. And so then the question is well, how do you do that? And how are you going to take this thing that's sort of designed for concert halls, et cetera, into a place that can actually change lives in meaningful ways? And so this has become a major theme and commitment of our conservatory here at Lawrence. It's a part of who we are. It's part of how we want our students to be thinking about music as they go through their education here, and what that's going to look like as they go out into the world, and how can their music impact the world positively. So, what I want to talk to you about today is kind of how these thoughts have evolved into a number of initiatives here. And I want to, before we go any further, just acknowledge that we have two people here from Lawrence who are directly involved in this. Jillian Johnson, who is our director, she directs all of our community outreach and music services at Lawrence, and also brings all of the performers who come to Lawrence here. But then there's also Betsy Cole here, who Betsy is running specifically our music tours that directly incorporate community engagement in the tour. And we'll be talking a bit about that specifically today. So one of the things we wanted to do at Lawrence as we tried to train and immerse our musicians into this idea of how can music impact society, we wanted also to take that into all of our performance opportunities. So we had some money given to us by a very generous donor to allow us to tour, but we decided that we didn't even want to take that money unless we could make a tour that directly reflected these values of how can music impact society positively. So we created a very specific kind of music tour that is the only one like that in the country, and we call it the Presto Tour. And the idea behind Presto is that our ensembles, our choirs, our bands, our orchestras, our jazz ensembles will go out on tour to Minneapolis or to Chicago, or this year we're going to Houston. And they will have performances, they will have concerts, but they will also have very specific engagement opportunities in those cities where our students can directly engage with different communities. And we don't see this as sort of that, that idea of the angel coming in, that we're going to solve all your problems by playing music for you. But we really see it as community conversations where our students get to interact with communities they might not get to interact with normally. So our first tour to Minneapolis, our bands went up there, and the whole focus of this tour was to interface with mental health organizations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. We interfaced with 5 different organizations. Our music education students created lessons that they took into an elementary school that was specifically focused on children on the autism spectrum. So they got to spend a good half a day working directly with these children. And these children often don't get to go to music and performances because oftentimes they're a little loud, they might want to run around while they're listening to music. music. And so we were able to design performances specifically for them to do all of that stuff. We worked with halfway houses and organizations, transitional facilities, where students went in and performed, but they also ate dinner with the clientele there, served dinner, made dinner. And so these ideas of interfacing became this powerful impetus for taking this to the next step. That tour was amazing. In interviews with our students, they said that it changed their life and outlook on how they could use their music positively. But we wanted to go one step further, and what we wanted to do was do something that I'm hearing echoed throughout this, which is, how do you, in a very real way, listen and acknowledge the voices of the people you were working with? And one of the most powerful tools we have for that is this practice called deep listening practice. And for those of you who were here last year, and we got to play with boomwhackers together, you got a little bit of that experience. But this practice isn't playing music at someone, or it isn't just inviting them to sing along, but it's actually an acknowledgement of everybody's creative energy that they are bringing to that situation. It's telling everyone that their voice matters, that their background matters, and what they bring to the table is important to the conversation, which I think is a persistent problem across all of the issues we're trying to face. Is how do the very people you're trying to help be heard in a way where they feel like they are seen and they are heard? So that's what we're talking about with this Presto. And so I think what we'll do, if we can roll this little video, this is highlights from the Presto tour to Chicago. And part of what you will see is an interaction with a group that's called YEP, which is Youth Empowerment Through Performance Project, which the organization specifically deals with homeless LGBTQ communities. This will also highlight, some of the performances.
A trip like Presto is not strictly giving or taking, but a lot more about collaborating with that community. Getting outside of the classroom, right? Learning in a city, learning from other people outside of the professors. That sort of experience for the students is priceless in their training.
And it's particularly a unique Lawrence experience in that these choirs that are touring are made up entirely of undergraduate singers. I'm a freshman, I get this opportunity to go on this trip, so it's so special.
I remember when I went on choir tour 2 different times with Cantala and concert choir, and singing in cathedrals, singing in churches. Little did I know that would become my workplace. So I think music can benefit any person who sings or practices or plays an instrument.
Talent is equally distributed, in our society, but access and opportunity isn't. It's clear to me that Lawrence as an institution has made this a priority. Sending faculty down here to work with our kids on a regular basis, perform for our students. It's been a destination for a lot of our students after they leave here and they graduate. The ripple effect is that more and more kids think about that as an opportunity.
Tours kind of solidify relationships in a good way. Personal connections grow in that space, that you really get to know people well because you're spending so much time together. It's not just about the music, but it's really about collaborating with people and making connections with people.
One of the things that we're really excited about is that Lawrence has built such an incredible community atmosphere and an incredible culture of creativity and improvisation. It's also an institution that's really thinking a lot about what entrepreneurship means and the skills that a 21st century musician needs. So really what this does is it prepares students to be effective in the real world in ways that most students don't have the opportunity to do if you're just learning about this in the classroom.
That's together.
We are very action-based. We are like in the field all the time. You know, using our art as a way to create activism. It's not just the theory parts of the craft and the art, but also the application of it. It's also being practical and creating spaces for their students to really be in the field. I think this first gathering was just powerful by itself, and I see something very beautiful coming out of it.
This is about much more than notes on a page and strict execution of pitches and rhythms. It is about humanity, it is about expression, it is about bringing people together. And I worked really hard to talk to my students about the fact that this is really only the beginning. And you know, as a result, I have encouraged many of my students who are going into music to take a look at Lawrence.
So, what we were trying to do there and what we experienced there, particularly with outreach into a group like YEP, wasn't us going in and seeing. We were able to spend 2 days with that organization creating together, creating music together. So it wasn't about learning a song, it was about creating something that never existed before with the community together. This is a powerful model of community engagement that really hasn't been used extensively in the music world. But what it does is it lets everyone involved know that they matter, and it lets everyone be seen and be heard. And the interesting thing is that you saw a brief clip there of Melissa Snoza, the executive director of the Fifth House Ensemble, who's one of the most active new music ensembles in Chicago that specializes in community engagement and community outreach over long, long stretches. So they work with groups for years at a time. But the cool thing is they also are very interested in data collection, and so they actually got grants to work with Loyola University to start to quantify what they're doing and the results of what they're doing. Melissa and Fifth House Ensemble have reached out to Lawrence to partner with Lawrence to learn more about deep listening practice, so then they can start incorporating this into new initiatives that they have with the San Francisco Opera and the Cleveland Orchestra. So we feel like there's something here. We're kind of on the cutting edge of a way to interact in a positive way with any community, but interact in a way that's actually empowering that base. It's empowering everybody who's in the room. It's creating a community, and it's why it resonated, the architecture talk resonated with me, because it's like creating a sonic community. It's like creating sonic spaces to interact with and be with others in a very safe space, B, in a creative space, in a place where you, by the time you're done interacting, you've made something that has never existed before. So I'm excited to see how this can impact some of the other initiatives here, whether that's on the mental health front, which we're very interested in. But really, for just about everything that we're talking about, whether that's education or homelessness, where Jason has been talking about when something resonated with me is creating habits of hope. Like, how can you break the cycle of hopelessness? And I believe there's ways to do that through creative music making, through collaborative improvisation, collaborative sounding. So, as I wind up here, I will say, just so you can look forward to this, is tomorrow morning, I believe we sort of start the day off with a deep listening session. So we'll actually be using some deep listening practice in this community right here to build a community, build trust, and then create and sound together and be together in this sonic environment. So we're really excited about what's going on here. I agree about your assessment of the Fox Valley and what's going on here. I think we're thought leaders. Corey Chisel and the Refuge Foundation are also partnering with us to move community music making forward and community impact work. So, we are incredibly grateful to be here and incredibly grateful to use whatever we're doing to help impact the community, but we're also excited to partner with anybody else who's interested in this work and feels like it could be a benefit to what you're all about. Thank you.